My name is Rachel Montgomery. I'm 33 years old, and I've always believed in simple, steady things: a quiet life, a well-kept home, and a peaceful routine. That's what I wanted, and it felt like I had it. I'm not one for flashy, showy gestures, but what I have is real. I have my dog, Max, a golden retriever who's been with me since the day I bought him as a puppy. I got him after my divorce because in the midst of losing everything, I needed something to remind me that love was still possible. Max was my rock. He was calm, gentle, the kind of dog that would lay his head on your lap and look at you as if to say, everything's going to be all right. I met Ethan 3 years ago. He was different from everyone else I'd known. He had this smooth, confident charm, and for some reason, he made me believe in fairy tales again. He moved in with me about 6 months ago. He didn't take much space, didn't ask for much, just blended into my life like he was meant to be there. At first, everything was perfect. Ethan was great with Max, often playing with him or taking him on long walks. There were no issues, at least none I could see. But then things started to change. The cracks, subtle at first, began to show. "Why does he take up so much space?" Ethan asked one evening, his voice a little too sharp for such a small question. "What do you mean?" I asked, glancing over from the kitchen where I was sorting through some bills. "He just occupies everything. You can't even walk through the living room without tripping over him." Max was sprawled out on his favorite rug, his tail lazily wagging. He wasn't bothering anyone. "It's fine," I said, trying to brush it off. "He's a big dog, but he's harmless. You'll get used to him." But Ethan wasn't done. "I just don't get why he sleeps in the bedroom. It's kind of unnecessary, don't you think?" He seemed almost defensive, like I had done something wrong by letting my dog sleep next to me. I didn't know what to say. Max had always been my comfort. My heart ached at the thought of him sleeping anywhere else. Maybe it's time we have a conversation about boundaries," I said, half joking, trying to ease the tension. But Ethan's face had already shifted, his smile gone cold. Conflict begins to build. The small digs didn't stop. They were little things. Questions about why Max had a specific brand of food, why I spent so much time with him, why I couldn't just leave him alone for a few hours. But they began to wear on me. Ethan and I had always gotten along, but it seemed like my relationship with Max was slowly becoming an issue. And then, one day, it all came to a head. I was working from home in my office when I heard a scream, sharp, sudden, filled with panic. It sent a chill straight to my spine. I ran out of my office, heart racing. Ethan was standing in the living room, holding his hand up in front of his face. His cheeks were flushed with anger. "Your dog bit me," he said, his voice shaking with what I could only describe as disbelief. "He attacked me. He's dangerous, Rachel." I froze. Max was lying in the corner of the room, his tail tucked under him, looking more frightened than I had ever seen him. "Let me see," I said, walking over to Ethan. He held out his hand. "Look at this," he practically shouted. "He bit me right here." I examined his hand. There was nothing. No mark, no redness, no bite. "Ethan," I said slowly, my voice shaking with confusion, "there's nothing here. No bite, no scratch, nothing." He stared at me like I was crazy. "What are you saying? It hurts. It really hurts. He attacked me, Rachel." I felt my heart beat faster, adrenaline coursing through me. "Ethan, if a dog bites you, there are marks. There are teeth impressions. There's no mark here. Look at your hand. There's nothing." I felt him pull away from me, his face reddening with frustration. "You're saying I'm lying? You're saying he didn't bite me? He's dangerous. He could have hurt me, or worse, someone else. I'm calling animal control." The words hit me like a punch. "Animal control?" I repeated, feeling a lump form in my throat. "You're calling them over nothing? Over a dog that's never hurt anyone in his life?" Ethan's jaw clenched. Yes, I am. And if you don't care about this, maybe it's time we reconsider our living situation." My blood ran cold. It was as if the ground beneath me had suddenly cracked open, threatening to swallow me whole. Foreshadowing. The night passed uneasily. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Ethan's words echoed in my mind. Something didn't add up. Max had never shown aggression before. He was the kind of dog who got along with everyone, including strangers and kids at the park. I could see his little face in my mind, looking up at me in confusion as he cowered in the corner, his tail tucked beneath him. It was as if he knew something was wrong. And yet, Ethan's accusations hung in the air. Why would he suddenly turn on Max like this? Was this really about a dog? Or was there something deeper going on? I couldn't stop thinking about it, and when my mind won't stop turning, I always go to one place: facts, evidence. I pulled out my phone, opened the security camera app, and scrolled back through the footage from the past few hours. What I saw made my stomach twist. I sat frozen, my phone in my hands as the video played. I watched as Ethan sat on the couch, scrolling through his phone, oblivious to what was about to unfold. Max, my gentle, loving dog, was lying on his bed across the room, his tail softly thumping against the floor. He looked completely at ease, the picture of calm. But then the footage shifted. Ethan stood up. He walked over to Max, who didn't move, still lying peacefully. Ethan nudged him with his foot, waking him up from his nap. Max immediately got to his feet, wagging his tail, as he always did when someone approached him. Ethan crouched down like he was going to pet him, but instead he grabbed Max's ear and twisted it violently. Max yelped, a soft cry of pain, and tried to pull away. I watched in horror as Ethan didn't let go. Instead, he yanked harder, forcing Max's head to the side, his body struggling to get free. The sound of Max's yelps echoed in my mind, my heart pounding as I watched Ethan release Max's ear, only to grab his collar and pull it tight. Max yelped again, louder this time, the desperation in his voice unmistakable. Ethan waited for a moment, letting go just enough to make Max whimper, before he slapped Max hard across the face. A full, painful hit. And then Max did what any animal would do when pushed to his limit. He barked, showing his teeth in a desperate attempt to protect himself. That was when Ethan stepped back, pretending to be startled. He started screaming at the top of his lungs. I couldn't breathe. I felt as if the room was closing in on me. The evidence, so clear, played over and over in my mind like a cruel nightmare. Ethan wasn't just accusing Max of being dangerous. He had deliberately provoked him, cornered him, hurt him until he reacted. The way he looked at Max after the slap, the way his eyes burned with something cold, he wasn't surprised. He was pleased. Emotional conflict. I felt a sickening anger rise in me as I backed out of the footage, trying to calm my breathing. My hands were trembling, my stomach twisted in knots. I had to confront him. I couldn't let him manipulate me any longer. But how? How could I even begin to process this? I stood up, my legs almost giving way beneath me, as I walked to the bedroom where Ethan was sitting, pretending to calm down. When I entered, he looked up at me with feigned innocence, his face showing nothing but faux concern. "Rachel, I don't know what's gotten into him," he said, his voice falsely gentle. "I was just trying to pet him, and he attacked me. I'm telling you, this dog is dangerous. I can't live like this." I stared at him for a long moment, the camera footage still fresh in my mind. I could see the lies in his eyes, the manipulation in his voice. This wasn't about a dog. This was about control. "You're lying," I said, my voice steady despite the chaos in my head. "You weren't trying to pet him. You were hurting him, provoking him. I saw it on the video." Ethan's face flickered with surprise for a split second, but then the mask dropped. He scoffed, standing up from the bed. "What video? You've been spying on me?" "It's a security camera," I replied, my voice cold now. "You knew about it when you moved in. I saw what you did, Ethan. I watched you hurt my dog. You didn't just hit him, you tortured him until he reacted. That's not self-defense, that's abuse." His expression morphed into something darker, and I could see the rage bubbling up under his skin. "You're crazy. I don't know what you think you saw, but you're wrong. You can't even trust a camera. It's illegal to record someone without their consent. You can't use that against me." "You hurt my dog," I said, my voice tight with emotion. "And I have evidence. You can't lie your way out of this." Escalation. Ethan stepped toward me, his face red with anger. "You don't get it, do you? I've had enough of this. I'm calling animal control. I'm telling them what happened." I didn't move, my body frozen with a mix of disbelief and determination. "You're not calling anyone. If you do, I'll call the police and show them what you did. You'll be the one facing charges, Ethan." He froze. For a moment, there was a brief flicker of hesitation in his eyes, just enough for me to know he was calculating his next move. But then, like a switch had been flipped, he turned away from me. "You can't do this," he said, his voice strained. "You're choosing a dog over me. After everything we've been through, this is how you treat me?" I shook my head slowly. "No, I'm choosing to protect what's mine, and you're not welcome here anymore. I want you to leave. Now." Foreshadowing and suspense. Ethan's face twisted with disbelief. "What? You can't kick me out. I live here too." I stood my ground, my voice growing colder with each word. You don't pay rent. You're not on the lease. You're a guest, and I'm asking you to leave. This is my home. You've broken my trust, and you've hurt my dog. That's unforgivable. Ethan's anger flared, but he could see I wasn't backing down. He grabbed his bag, throwing it over his shoulder in a huff. Fine, but you'll regret this. I swear, Rachel, you'll regret this. The door slammed behind him, the sound echoing in the empty apartment. I stood there for a moment, trying to breathe through the crushing wave of emotions. Relief? Yes, but also something darker, a feeling that this was only just the beginning. The silence in the apartment was deafening. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator, the soft sound of Max's paws padding across the floor as he walked over to me. I crouched down to pet him, the familiar warmth of his fur grounding me, reminding me that not everything was broken. But Ethan's parting words echoed in my mind. You'll regret this? I didn't know how I could regret standing up for Max, but I was already bracing myself for whatever Ethan had in store for me next. Max nudged his head under my hand, seeking comfort, and I could feel the weight of everything that had happened crashing down on me. He wasn't just my dog. He was my family. The idea that someone could hurt him, on purpose, left a hollow, aching pit in my chest. I grabbed my phone, the weight of it heavy in my palm. The texts from Ethan were already flooding in. The first one was simple. I can't believe you're doing this. The next one, you're choosing a dog over me. You'll regret this. And then the floodgates opened. 38 texts in total, each one more desperate and more manipulative than the last. Each one attempting to shift the blame, to make me feel guilty for the things he had done. I set my phone down, feeling a wave of nausea wash over me. I couldn't read these. I couldn't let him drag me back into his web of lies. The shocking call. I barely had time to collect myself before my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call. I glanced at the screen. It was from Animal Control. My heart skipped a beat. Had he already filed a report? Was this his next move? Hello? I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. Ms. Montgomery? The officer's voice was formal, but I could hear a note of concern underneath. We've received a report regarding your dog, Max. A bite incident was reported. We need to come by and assess the situation. I blinked, trying to process what she was saying. A bite incident? There was no bite. Max didn't bite anyone. We've been told otherwise, ma'am, the officer said. We're just following up. Please make sure the dog is available for assessment. I gripped the phone tightly, my mind racing. Ethan had gone straight to Animal Control after I kicked him out. Of course he had. This was his next step in the game. I understand, I said, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. I'll be here, but I promise you, Max is harmless. He's never hurt anyone. The confrontation. The officers arrived about an hour later, 2 of them, one older, one younger. The older one looked at Max, who was sitting quietly at my feet, his tail wagging gently. The younger one immediately started taking notes, scanning the room. Can I see any documentation? The older officer asked, his tone more neutral now that he could see Max's calm demeanor. Vaccination records? Any history of aggression? I nodded quickly, walking over to the desk and pulling out Max's vet records. Everything's up to date. He's been to the vet regularly. He's a friendly dog. There's no reason for this report. The older officer glanced over the paperwork and nodded. All right, we'll need to assess the situation further, but from what I'm seeing here, there's no cause for concern. He paused, turning to his partner. Let's take a look at the footage. I felt my breath catch in my throat as I led them to the living room, where I had the camera footage saved. The older officer watched the video in silence, his expression hardening as the footage played out. I'll be honest, Ms. Montgomery, he said once the video finished. What we're seeing here is a clear case of animal abuse. That's not self-defense, that's deliberate provocation. I exhaled a shaky breath, relief washing over me in waves. The evidence was undeniable. Ethan couldn't lie his way out of this one. We'll clear your dog, the younger officer said, looking at Max, who was now lying on his bed, his eyes soft but wary. But we're going to have to file a report about the abuse we just witnessed. This is a crime. My heart sank. What do I do now? You should file a police report, the older officer advised. This is a clear case of animal cruelty, and it needs to be handled through legal channels. The police report. I didn't wait. After the officers left, I immediately logged into the police website and filed the report. I attached the footage, my vet records, and everything else I had. I wasn't going to let Ethan get away with this. And then the text came again, from Ethan. You're ruining my life, one read. You're turning everyone against me. You'll regret this, another said. I won't let you do this to me. You don't understand what you're doing. I didn't reply. I knew what he was doing. He was trying to control me again, to make me feel like the villain in a story he'd written. But I wasn't going to fall for it. I was done with him. The last text I received from Ethan was just one sentence. "You'll never be rid of me." I stared at the screen, feeling nothing. I wasn't scared anymore. I was stronger than that. The final confrontation. The next morning, the phone rang again. This time it was Ethan's mother. Her voice was shaky, almost pleading. "Rachel, what have you done? Ethan's beside himself. How could you do this to him after everything he's done for you?" I felt the bile rise in my throat, but I kept my voice calm. "Your son abused my dog, and I have the footage to prove it. If you don't believe me, you can watch it too." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When she spoke again, her tone had shifted. "You're lying," she snapped. "My son would never do that. You've poisoned everyone against him." "No," I said, my voice steady. "He poisoned himself. You need to stop protecting him." The line went dead. I felt a strange sense of finality in that moment. Ethan's mother was just as toxic as he was, enabling his lies, his manipulation. But I wasn't going to let them take away my peace. Max was safe. I was safe. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again. The aftermath. The days that followed were a blur. My phone was flooded with messages. People I barely knew reaching out to ask if I was okay, if I needed anything. But there was one message that stood out among the rest. It was from a mutual friend of Ethan's and mine. She had heard about the situation through the grapevine. "I just want you to know I'm on your side," she texted. "Ethan's been telling everyone some wild stuff about you, but I know the truth." I sighed, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on me. Ethan wasn't just trying to manipulate me anymore. He was poisoning the people around us, twisting the narrative to make himself the victim. But I wasn't going to let that happen. I wasn't going to let him destroy my life or Max's life. Max had been quiet this past few days, mostly sticking close to me, as if sensing the turmoil. But he was still my Max, gentle and sweet, just as he'd always been. And now it was time to make sure that the people who needed to know the truth heard it. Legal battles. It wasn't long before I got the call from the police. They were investigating the video footage, and the case was being sent to the district attorney. I didn't know what would happen next, but I had to be ready for whatever came. When I walked into the police station to give my statement, I could feel the heaviness of it all. This wasn't just a fight for my dog. It was a fight for my dignity. The detective asked me about Ethan's behavior, about his lies, his manipulation. He was thorough, asking about everything, from the incident with Max to the texts I had saved. "I can't believe he did this," I said, my voice shaking slightly, despite myself. "I never thought he was capable of this kind of cruelty." The detective gave me a sympathetic look. "He was, and now we have the evidence. That footage you have, it's damning." I nodded, taking a deep breath. It wasn't over yet, but at least I wasn't alone in this fight anymore. The DA would review the case, and from what I had been told, it seemed likely that charges would be pressed against Ethan for animal cruelty. But then, the next blow came. Ethan had started trying to reach out again, his tone shifting from anger to desperation. I ignored the first few calls, but then I saw the message he had sent me. "I'm sorry, Rachel. I know I messed up. Please, can we talk?" My phone buzzed again, and I saw another message come through. "I'm willing to make it right. Let's put this behind us." I couldn't believe it. After everything he'd done, after he'd tortured Max, manipulated me, and turned the world against me, he thought he could just apologize and fix it? I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. The court date. The day of the trial arrived, and I found myself standing in front of a courtroom, preparing to give my impact statement. Ethan's lawyer had tried to argue that the recording was inadmissible, claiming that I had entrapped him, but the DA shot that down quickly. There was no trap here, just a man who had crossed a line and thought he could hide behind lies. I stood there, my hands shaking, but my voice steady, as I spoke about what had happened. About how Max had been a part of my life for so long, how he had been my comfort after everything else had fallen apart. I spoke about the fear I had felt when I found out what Ethan had done, and the shame I carried for not seeing the signs sooner. "I thought I knew him," I said, my voice breaking slightly. "But this man, he wasn't who I thought he was. And he hurt my dog. He hurt something that I loved more than anything." When I finished, I could feel the eyes of the room on me, some sympathetic, others hardened, but none of them judging. I had done what I needed to do. The truth was out. Ethan's consequences. The verdict came a few weeks later. Ethan pled guilty to animal cruelty and was sentenced to 1 year of probation, 200 hours of community service at an animal shelter, and a $20,500 fine. The judge also mandated that he attend anger management classes and pay my vet bills. The court made it clear that his actions had consequences and that no one, no matter their status or their charm, could get away with abusing an animal. I felt a strange sense of closure after the trial. It wasn't about the fine or the community service. It was about justice. It was about knowing that Max was safe and that Ethan would never be able to hurt anyone else like he hurt us. The final chapter. A few months passed, and life slowly began to return to normal. I focused on healing, both emotionally and physically, working with Max to help him recover from what he had gone through. He was doing better, though he was still a little wary of new people, especially men. But with time, he was becoming more like himself again. And me? I was healing too. I was stronger than I had been before. I knew what it was like to trust someone completely and have them betray you. But I also knew what it was like to stand up for what mattered, what was right, and not back down. Ethan had tried to make it all go away. He tried to make me doubt myself, to make me feel guilty for doing the right thing. But in the end, he lost. Epilogue. I heard from Ethan's mother one last time. She called me, sounding defeated. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. I didn't understand what he had done until I saw the footage. He's getting help now. He's in therapy. I paused before responding. That's good for him. But what he did to Max, that's not something I can ever forget. He needs to face the consequences. The line went quiet for a moment, and then she sighed. I understand. Goodbye, Rachel. And that was it. She hung up. I never heard from her again. As for me, I was done. The chapter with Ethan was over. And as for Max, he was more than okay. He was home, safe, happy. And that's all that mattered.